The Las Vegas Raiders have officially drafted running back Ashton Jeanty, and I am absolutely fired up. And today we're going to talk about what this does for the Raiders as we kind of go forward. To me, this is one of the best offensive players in this class. Jeanty is, he speaks for himself, right? You can check his highlights out. You can check the tape out. This guy's an absolute superstar player. And I see some of the comments where people are going to criticize it because it's a running back. I see a lot of Raider fans hating the pick. I absolutely love it, man. I've been very honest about how I feel about taking a running back this high. But I've also always stated that if the Raiders do take Ashton Jeanty, I'd be okay with it because you understand the type of playmaker this guy is. To me, I'm excited for the Raiders' future, right? I'm excited to be able to bring in a guy like Jeanty who, let's be honest, right? Right now in the NFL, there's 3 running backs that are kind of in their own tier, right? You got Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, and Ashton Jeanty. That's it, right? That's a completely different tier. With the way these guys are kind of built, the speed, the quickness, the vision, just everything of how it kind of comes together. You have some running backs like Josh Jacobs as an example who has elite vision, arguably the best vision in the NFL from that running back position, but he doesn't have the quickness. He doesn't have the speed to run away from guys. Then you got guys like Derrick Henry who has phenomenal balance, but then he also doesn't have speed and his vision's not as good. And then you get guys like Ashton Jeanty who kind of just, put all that together. Right. To me, I think the Raiders got a lot better by bringing in a guy like Ashton Jeanty, and it kind of, it kind of pushes forward what the Raiders at least kind of feel. People are like the Raiders got to get a cornerback in this draft, right? Will Johnson, Jadar Barron, and of course, the draft's still going on. The Raiders could always, potentially still draft the corner in the second round. We needed an interior offensive lineman, a right tackle. We talked a lot about right tackle. Kelvin Banks as well as Armin Memba have been guys that have kind of risen to be drafted by the Raiders. But Ashton Jeanty's always kind of been there, right? He was like the original guy where people were like, hey, get this guy to the Las Vegas Raiders. And what's interesting about this is, just kind of taking a step back, for a couple months now, we knew the Raiders loved Ashton Jeanty, right? They met with this guy. Our general manager hinted it multiple times, even recently as recently just a week ago. John Spytek literally said, when do we get to the point where you can't take a running back high? And everybody thought, me included, that meant the Raiders were not drafting this guy, right? And here it is, man. 6th overall pick. You're on the clock, and the Raiders take this guy. Our general manager was the only general manager at that pro day, and the Raiders ended up actually pulling the trigger. Now, I don't know if the Raiders were trying to trade back, right? There are a lot of reports that even the Browns were a team who traded from 2 to 5. Teams are trying to reach and potentially get to that 5th overall pick. And the Browns basically decided not to do that, and they went ahead and took their guy. I think they took Mason Graham, which allowed the Raiders to get Ashton Jeanty. And again, I really, really like the fact that the Raiders get Ashton Jeanty. The tape speaks for itself. You can look at some of the stats. 2,600 rushing yards, 29 touchdowns. The guy averaged 7 yards per attempt. So it's not just that he had 374 carries, right? He literally averaged 7 yards per attempt. You don't generally get that from running backs coming out. And I understand Boise State plays in the Mount Western Conference, and you can definitely say that, hey, maybe that's why he has the numbers he has. But he also dominated Oregon. And Oregon, we kind of saw how good they were in this season. And again, the tape speaks for itself. You look at some of the advanced stats coming out as well. The breakaway percentage, this guy dominated those type of stats, right? The breakaway percentage, the number of times he forced the guy, a number of times he forced missed tackles, right? Ashton Jeanty had an absolute incredible season in 2024. And I'm not surprised that he's a top 10 pick and the Raiders took him with the 6th overall pick. We always knew this was a guy the Raiders could potentially draft. And I also, just taking another step back, I also love the fact that the Raiders, even though you had a couple other options at that pick, said that we're going to go with the running back. We're going to make our offense better. We're going to get more explosive because we knew last season that was kind of a struggle that the Raiders had, especially after Devontae Adams kind of quit on the Raiders. The Raiders offense struggled, right? Yes, we had Brock Bowers, but that was basically it. There was no more explosiveness on the offensive side for the Raiders outside of Brock Bowers. And even then, he's a tight end, right? So he's not like super, super elite in terms of the speed. But this guy here comes in and makes your offense a lot more explosive. Makes it a lot better as you kind of go forward. Any given run, Ashton Jeanty can take it the distance. And We'll see kind of how it works out as he kind of gets over to the Raiders, as he gets into the building, as the Raiders continue to kind of revamp that O-line. It does look like the Raiders will stick with DJ Glaze. I'd be very shocked if the Raiders drafted another tackle. I was okay with DJ Glaze going into the season, right? He is a rookie. Hopefully he's able to develop as we kind of get into the season. But I still would love to see the Raiders take an offensive lineman to play interior offensive line, right? Second, third round, I think is a sweet spot to be able to draft a guard. I would love to see the Raiders still draft one of those positions. Even corner. Corner was another position where we knew that we kind of needed to potentially add, right? And we were in play to take a corner with the 6th overall pick, but we did see guys like Will Johnson and Jadab Barron. We saw their stock kind of fall over the past couple of weeks. So maybe if one of those guys is there in the second round, you can potentially, bring in one of those two guys. But either way, man, the Raiders have officially made it official. And this guy's now going to be your starting running back. And, I think one of the things with the Raiders as we kind of go forward is, it's been very clear that this team is going to go all in to try to win now, right? They had made it really, really clear. From the day John Spytek, Pete Carroll got into the building, it was, we're going to try to win now. Maxx Crosby made it clear that he's only going to stay with the Raiders if they try to win now. And I think bringing in Ashton Jeanty kind of says that we are trying to win now, right? Because you don't bring in a running back where running backs last like 5 to 8 years on average. You don't bring that in, right, unless you're ready to start to kind of compete, right? You don't bring that type of player in unless you're going all in. And again, it's just one of those things where the Raiders decided not to take Shedeur Sanders, right? Shedeur Sanders is on the clock. They decided we don't care about the future, right? As in terms of the distance future, we care about winning now. So again, you're sending that signal, you're sending that message that Ashton Jeanty is going to essentially be the guy for the Raiders. I am also going to do a film breakdown on Ashton Jeanty. I'll probably drop that today at some point. If not, it'll be the first thing I post tomorrow morning. Again, absolutely love the pick. I'm not going to go live. It's just way too much to be able to go live for me. We are kind of in a move as well. But I want to talk about the depth a little bit for the Raiders as well, because, we did bring in Raheem Mostert. We do have guys like Zamir White. Sincere McCormick is still there. Dylan Wabe was drafted last year. By my count, the Raiders have like 7 running backs on this roster right now. So we're going to have to cut some guys. It might be 6 running backs. We're going to have to cut some guys down, right? So as I think even before training camp starts, the Raiders will probably end up releasing one or two of these guys. We already heard that Zamir White was kind of on the trade block. I think it would be smart for the Raiders to potentially move off on one or two of those running backs and really set how the running back unit's going to look as we kind of go forward. Even Dylan Wabe, we don't really know what this guy is. I think for the Raiders, having Ashton Jeanty is great. You have an absolute explosive running back. But the Seahawks, when Pete Carroll was there, they had 2 explosive running backs, right? They took them in back-to-back drafts, so it wasn't the same year. But could the Raiders double back, right? In a class where we've never had this many good running backs, could the Raiders double back and potentially draft a second running back, maybe in like round 4 or 5? I think there's a good chance we're still going to have some really, really good running backs when that time kind of comes around. So from a depth perspective, it'd be interesting to see how it kind of shapes out as we kind of go forward. I would still love for the Raiders to add a wide receiver as well. We all know what Ashton Jeanty is on the offensive side. Let's add some of that at the wide receiver position, right? And there's some good quality wide receivers. They're not like perfect day one guys, but they're developmental guys, right? They're guys that, Kyle Williams, for example, if he develops a little bit, could be an absolute playmaker. There's guys, Iowa State has 2 wide receivers that are legit coming out. Both guys are probably going to be taken in the first 2 rounds, right? So hopefully the Raiders are able to just continue to add a little bit. I personally love the Ashton Jeanty pick. I want to know what you guys think, man. All that talk over the past 2 months of taking this guy or this guy or this guy, it's finally official, right? John Spytek, we can take him for his word at this point. The Raiders have drafted a running back. I want to know what you guys think, man. Thumbs up, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.